What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, Nintendo had their Indie World presentation, and they showed off a ton of games. There was certainly a lot of variety there, definitely games that no one was really expecting, and there were some pretty cool ones too that I wanted to point out. But yes, there was one massive game that was announced there that got everyone online really excited. We'll talk about that here today. Also, it looks like yesterday, CD Projekt Red held an unscheduled meeting with shareholders to kind of explain the situation around Cyberpunk 2077, allow them to ask questions, and then give some answers that were pretty revealing, actually. And it looks like we do have new games heading to Nintendo Online service, which does complete a trilogy now on the Super Nintendo. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if brand new here, hit the red subscribe button down below. And we're going to start today with Xbox Game Pass and EA Play, specifically on the PC. Now, this has already happened with consoles for the Xbox One, where we had the EA Play service kind of merge into the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate service. So overnight, basically, a ton of games were added from EA's back catalog, which is pretty good. There's a lot of good games in there that just get added in automatically. We even had a Fallen Order kind of just thrown into Game Pass right away. So it was pretty cool to see that all happen all at once. Xbox Game Pass just grew massively in like 24 hours, but there was still the promise of it heading to Xbox Game Pass for PC. However, it looks like it has now been delayed into next year. This is what they posted up on their website. When we originally set out to write this blog post, which would announce the availability of EA Play on PC with Xbox Game Pass, it looked a little bit different. Unfortunately, what had been a celebratory post is now one asking for a little more patience. We made the decision to delay until 2021 the release of EA Play on PC as part of the Xbox Game Pass for PC and Ultimate memberships. Okay, so the thing with EA Play, it appears that it is a long-term relationship. Aaron Greenberg even made mention of this online, and I have a feeling just the overall scope of all the different configurations on PC and the number of games for EA Play that get added in probably ran into some issue somewhere to try to get this whole thing done and out now. And I guess they decided, hey, you know what, rather than release it broken and busted on like the Microsoft's Windows Store has kind of that reputation a bit. They certainly don't want to add to it. So I'm thinking they're just going to be delaying it 2 to 3 months. They mentioned kind of like early next year, which, yeah, that's like 2 or 3 months away. So unfortunately, it looks like you're going to have to wait just a bit longer if you were waiting for EA Play to enter Game Pass on PC. Also, check this out. We've talked about SNK before and their systems that they keep releasing. Well, it looks like we're going to do another one. This is on Twitter. They said, a brand new console is coming from SNK in 2021, a system to bridge the needs between passionate fans and console gaming enthusiasts. All right, so they have a card there that shows like a wireless symbol and all this. They've done some interesting choices with like plug and play systems. Remember, they released that entire arcade stick that we looked at here on the channel that had different games built into it. And then they also had kind of the tabletop arcade unit that was kind of neat, but it didn't do emulation that well. Again, I'm hoping what they try here, this is just my thought, I think it'd be cool, is if they went back, got the Neo Geo Pocket color name, and rebuilt and made like a really high quality handheld device and had like 20 or 30 games built in with a nice screen and that really cool clicky stick. That would be a good way to go about it, because I don't think they're going to build a console with interchangeable cartridges or any of this. That's an expensive thing to get into. Like the Xbox, the PlayStation, and the Switch, that takes a lot of time, effort, R&D, money. It's a whole thing. So I still think it's going to be a plug-and-play system. I'd like to be pleasantly surprised with cartridges and all of this, but we'll see. Apparently in 2021, we're getting another system from SNK. Oh, and we had talked previously this week about Funimation having their app teased for the Switch. Well, it looks like it's been announced and even released now, depending on your region. You can see this tweet here saying, "You'll never put it down again. Anime arrives on the Nintendo Switch for the first time via the refreshing new look of the Funimation app coming tomorrow." That was on the 14th, so it is out now. That appears to be in US and Canada, and then UK, Ireland, and Mexico are going to be getting it a little later on. So there we are. We do have another streaming app, at least on the Switch, and I'd like to think that this trend will continue, and maybe we'll get other streaming apps like Netflix, because the user base is pretty large now on the Switch, and that's something that keeps coming up. Hey, why isn't Netflix on the Switch, or why isn't this streaming service on the Switch? Whereas on like other platforms, they'll just get different streaming services in bunches. Like when the PS5 launched, they had a remote that had them already on the different buttons there. So I'm not really sure what's taken so long to get these done, but this could be a good sign, and I'm hoping it trends in this direction where we can get things like Netflix, and it just appears and it's not like these big headlines. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with CD Projekt Red Red and Cyberpunk 2077, which is like the biggest topic right now over the last week since we found out about those PS4 and Xbox One versions. Then it turned into, oh, CD Projekt Red was holding off review codes for this because they knew they weren't great and they had all the pre-orders and they wanted to kind of skirt by that a bit if they could, and it's not a great look for CD Projekt Red. So they did call a meeting with shareholders, seemingly out of nowhere. It's unscheduled, emergency meeting you could call it even, and it appears that they wanted to answer questions, try to set the record as straight as they could, and then look towards the future to hopefully fix these versions up for people who have purchased them. And naturally, one of the first questions was, hey, what happened with the PS4 and the Xbox One version of these games, as they said. First, your question was about the focus and the calls of ours ignoring, so to speak, the shortcomings of the current gen version. It is more about us looking, as we previously stated, at the PC and next gen performance rather than current gen. We definitely did not spend enough time looking at that. I wouldn't say that we felt any external or internal pressure to launch on the date other than the normal pressure, which is typical for any release. So that was not the calls. In terms of the certification process and the third parties, this is definitely on our side. I can only assume that they trusted that we're going to fix things upon release, and that obviously did not come together exactly as we had planned. Now they're going to talk about how they will be working on the Xbox One and the PS4 version going forward with a priority to make sure that they are more playable, we'll say. I mean, they say it's not going to look like a next-gen game. Yeah, we know that. It's current-gen system. Just, you know, not in like the teens for frame rate, just like a locked 30, and whatever you got to do to the world, you got to do. We get it. As long as it's playable. It's interesting though, they talk about focusing on next-gen versions of the games when the next-gen version of the game isn't even out till next year. This is just all run through backwards compatibility. I mean, they even had an Xbox One X special edition for this game that released like over the summer. It's odd that they weren't focusing on the Xbox One and the PS4 versions completely. That's their biggest user base, like next to PC, of course, because that's where they sell the most generally, right away at launch, and then over time the console versions will overtake PC, I'm sure, because it happened with The Witcher 3. But it's strange because we know there's like 120 million PS4 users or so, and like another 50 to 60 million on the Xbox side. You figured they'd look at that and say, yeah, we should probably make sure it runs on those systems. And then the other interesting thing here is they mentioned the certification process with Microsoft and Sony, and seemingly Microsoft and Sony just trusted that they would have these at least up to standards so that it didn't come out and just annoy people into asking Microsoft and Sony for refunds. It's the whole situation just sounds like they're having a hard time explaining what really happened. Now, another question that was asked naturally had to do with money, and that's refunds. Because, well, I mean, the investors are going to know, wait, are there a lot of refunds happening right now? Because you mentioned in that post that you're going to start doing that if people want that. This is what they had to say. I'll start. The question is whether Microsoft and Sony are participating financially in refunds. One has to understand Microsoft and Sony have refund policies for every product that is released digitally on their storefronts. Despite several articles I've seen that things are being set up just for us, it's actually not true. These policies are in place and have always been in place. They're not offered specifically for us. All right, so the big thing here is there's no deal between Sony and Microsoft and CD Projekt Red for getting these refunds done easily. Most likely you will still get a runaround from Sony, and that's why we're seeing people say, oh, the refund's not working. They're saying no. They're saying to wait for a patch because it's coming by February or something, and it's like, oh, that's not good. That's why CD Projekt Red put their email in that release that they did to the public, I guess just in case. Now, Sony and Microsoft have different things set up. I know Microsoft is typically more lenient when it comes to refunds. Sony's pretty straightforward. They're like, hey, if you bought this game and you played it or you streamed it or something, it's yours. And that's kind of it. Now, I'm sure you could probably argue with them a bit, and then they'll do the whole, okay, we'll do it this one time for you. But it is interesting because in their fine print, they mention that unless the game is just broken, I guess you could argue it, but it would be really tough, and Sony would probably just say, nah, we're not doing that. So I guess if you need your money back, email CD Projekt Red. They said before December 21st. You might want to do it soon. Now, the biggest thing here is it appears that CD Projekt Red does recognize the biggest issue here because they were asked during these questions, hey, how much is it going to cost? What's the cost of these patches? And you know what? They actually responded correctly to this one. This was posted up by Games Radar. They said, the cost of patching the game is irrelevant compared to what we have at stake at this moment. So there is no question about it. We definitely want to fix the game, but we made our promise to gamers and we'll be doing everything to stick to it. This really comes down to CD Projekt Red and their reputation. They've built this up very, very well for years and years now as them being above EA technically in gamers' minds, right? Above Activision, Take-Two, all of these. They were the chosen one, right, for a lot of people. That's what I mean. There's this mystique around CD Projekt Red. They would poke fun at different companies for doing things like microtransactions and releasing broken games and all of this stuff, right? But here they are in the situation where they're getting some serious backlash from gamers, and yes, their reputation took a big hit here with Cyberpunk 2077. Sure, they made a ton of money, but like you're thinking more long-term with these kind of things, because when Witcher 4 comes out, sure, there's going to be some excitement around it, right? But there is still going to be kind of in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, but remember what happened with Cyberpunk 2077? That's not what CD Projekt Red wants to deal with. So that's one thing here. I do think they're going to work really, really hard to fix these games. It's just a shame they didn't delay the game instead, and I know what you're thinking, they couldn't. They couldn't delay the game because people online would make fun of them. Yeah, they'd make fun of them for like a day, and then everyone would move on to the next thing, and it would be much better than releasing this game in the state that it did, and now that's going to stick with this game going forward. Even if they fix it by next year, everyone's going to remember CD Projekt Red released Cyberpunk 2077 completely broken and then tried to hide it from everyone for the most part, so they could keep their pre-orders. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and Indie World. Now, there are a lot of games here. I'm just gonna go through them pretty quickly, stopping for a few that I was pretty excited to see get announced here, and then of course we'll wrap it up with the really big announcement here. So let's get started right away with Calico, which is a relaxing game about running a cat cafe. That's already out now, but I saw that and I was, that's an interesting idea for a game. That's what I mean with these indie games. You never know what you're gonna see here. Grindstone, that one's out today. It's a puzzle battler as it was described there. When the Past Was Around, that's also out today. Super Meat Boy Forever. This one was exciting for me because I liked Super Meat Boy on the Xbox 360. I played it a ton back then. This one's out December 23rd, so not too long, about a week or so from now. Cyber Shadow, which is a game I've been looking forward to now since I saw it announced. This looks great. It looks like a Ninja Gaiden style game. Reminds me a bit of The Messenger, which I absolutely loved when that one released, and that's coming out January 26th, so a little over a month. I'll be grabbing that day one, absolutely. Then we have Tunche, which is a 2D beat 'em up that takes place in the Amazon rainforest. That's March 2021. Cosmocrats, that's March 2021. Finding Paradise, March 2021. Hazel Sky, March 2021. Hoa, March 2021. Trash Sailors, that's out spring 2021. Alba, a wildlife adventure, that's also spring 2021. Fist of Fluffs, spring 2021. Happy Game, which is a survival horror puzzle game, that's out next spring, and that one looked kind of weird. I might check that one out. I'm not as big into like the horror style games. That kind of look like a horror, like psychological style, so that might be one I kind of come back to spring 2021 to check out a bit more. We have Genosha, which is a sci-fi visual novel, and then Very, Very Valet. We have Valet out early 2021, along with Genosha also early 2021. And then the big game that was announced, I already told you guys about it yesterday, was Among Us. That is now out on the Switch, and yeah, that's a big announcement. This would be the first console that'd be coming to. It was on cell phones and on PC, and I mean, it took the internet by storm. It is a lot of fun to play, though. I've played it on PC with a couple of people, and it is a good time. We use Discord usually for that, so I am curious how this is going to work out on the Switch. I mean, I guess if you're just like, oh, I'm gonna play in handheld mode, and I'll leave Discord open over here so we can do this. Yeah, I mean, I guess that would work, but I think it would be a lot better if they either integrated voice chat in, or we had some sort of side-loading voice app for party chat on the Switch, just to kind of bring everything together on one system. That way you don't need to have a laptop over here and your Switch over here, because you could then just, play Among Us on your laptop. It's not a very hard game to run, but either way, big get there for Nintendo to get that done. It sounds like Among Us has actually been in development for the Switch for a couple of months now, as they let people know on Twitter. So exciting stuff there. If you've never tried Among Us, this is a good one to play with some friends around, especially if you have it on the Switch and everyone's in handheld mode, even in the same room. That could be a lot of fun if you get like enough people together and play it that way. But yeah, Among Us, make sure you check that one out. Not a bad indie presentation here with a couple of standouts, but there are certainly a lot of quantity here and a lot of different types of games here. But yeah, the 2021 looking pretty packed right now for indie games for Nintendo, and then we get into January, and maybe it's about time for a full Nintendo Direct. Next up, let's talk about resellers and the scalping market right now, because it is rough out there on Best Buy or Walmart when a PlayStation 5 or even the Xbox now goes up. It crashes, it goes down pretty quick, and then you see like 10 more pop up on eBay right away. anyway. And a lot of it has to do with different bot software being used right now to target systems that are highly profitable, especially if you get them in bulk. But what if the government started getting involved and saying, well, maybe the bot stuff should be illegal, because that appears to be something that is brewing right now in the UK. We can go over here to VGC that had the story on this one. UK politicians call for action against PS5 and Xbox Series scalpers. MPS motion a debate over resale of consoles and automated bots, which they say should be banned. They say Monday's motion, which has so far been signed by a total of 15 members of parliament, also calls on the UK government to make the resale of goods purchased using automated bots software favored by scalpers to circumvent retail queues an illegal activity. The MPs suggest implementing legislative proposals similar to those introduced for the secondary selling of tickets, which require resellers to be transparent in regards to their identity and details of seating. And to be honest, this is probably the only way you're going to see retailers really care about bots, because either way, they are making their money. Yes, they like to tack on extra sales to these different systems, but I mean, they're getting traffic to their site, which probably looks like a ton when all these bots are hitting it all at once. And that's the biggest draw for Walmart and Best Buy and Target, is just to get people in the doors or get people to their website. And in this instance, it's at least working, but it is frustrating. And trust me, I see a lot of you in the comments, whenever we talk about scalpers, resellers, any of this for the PS5 or the Xbox, say this should be made illegal because it's annoying, it's frustrating. And yeah, it's tough. It really is. Because I do think if someone is out there and they're like, well, I'm gonna buy another one and just sell it. I mean, look, if they get in the queue and they get lucky enough to get one, yeah, I mean, sure, they can go resell it. But it's when people start hitting these sites with, you know, like bots that get 10 or 20 systems at once and make it so it's impossible for anyone else to get them, and then they just take it to the secondary market and resell it. That is the part that's really frustrating that I would actually like to see stop, because it is, I would say, detrimental at times to these gaming companies, even because they're trying to get these systems to different people and try to make them available. But it's like almost impossible if these bots keep hitting these websites, and retailers probably won't care to stop it. So interesting stuff there. But let me know if you guys think the government should be stepping in to stop these resale bots. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some new Nintendo and Super Nintendo games that are heading to the Nintendo Switch online service. We can see this tweet sent out here by Nintendo saying 5 more titles are coming to the SNES and NES Nintendo Switch Online Collection on December 18th. On the Super Nintendo side, we have Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, The Ignition Factor, Super Valis 4, Tough Enough, and then on the NES side, we have Nightshade. Now, the two I recognize immediately, The Ignition Factor and Donkey Kong Country 3. DK, of course, that completes the trilogy, but Donkey Kong Country 2 was my favorite one, and I don't remember being too high on 3. I think of the 3 of them, 3 was probably the worst, I would say, but still, it's there. It's pretty cool to have the whole trilogy on the Super Nintendo Online service. And then the Ignition Factor is an interesting one, because that, I believe in Japan, was called Firefighters. And yeah, you play as a firefighter, from what I remember, isometric kind of top-down view, and you go through different levels that way, and it was very unique. But otherwise, I'll check out some of the other ones. Maybe I did play them or rent them at one point, and kind of playing through them a little bit will kind of jog my memory. But yes, really cool to see the Donkey Kong trilogy there for the Super Nintendo, and then of course on Nintendo side, I guess Nightshade. But either way, at least Nintendo had some to add before the end of the year. And I wonder what we get in 2021. Maybe that's when we get another system, or maybe that's when they'll finally add Super Mario RPG. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Linkspace saying they knew they would lose more in canceled pre-orders if they showed the gameplay than they'll lose from refunding the relatively small amount of people who know about and do this option. Yeah, you're right about that. And we see Sony giving people a hard time even for refunds. Some people won't actually email them about it, I'm sure. And even then, I'm sure the inbox is like stuffed right now full of people who are at least inquiring and finding out what it would take to get a refund. Then on top of that, if they had delayed it, like we said, they probably would have lost pre-orders there too, as people would have probably canceled the pre-order to get something else, as I'm sure some of those orders were for holiday gifts. So it was a tough situation for CD Projekt Red, but really the right thing they could have done is just release the PC version and then just pushed console versions to next year. And you know, if that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. Because now they have this situation where the reputation took a pretty big hit. I think people would have been able to deal with a buggy game that they actually let reviewers see. as opposed to one that barely works on current gen systems, and they didn't let anyone really see it until after release, and everyone was picking them up. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see CD Projekt Red work to build back consumer trust. I think they can. Like, I think they could fix it and maybe even do like some free DLC or something alongside of it, but it's going to be a journey for them now going forward over the next, I'm going to say, year as they work to fix all this stuff and then probably build on top of the game. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whether it's CD Projekt Red in their unscheduled meeting with shareholders, what did you think about some of the questions that were asked, the answers that were given? I left the whole transcript down in the sources if you want to take a look at that, or they even have a 45-minute recording of the whole thing online that you can listen to. And then what do you think about the indie world that we had yesterday? Was there any game that really caught your eye, or are you just all about Among Us right now? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.